So, folks, I tried to put together a big long segment the other day on Ezra Klein, then my internet thought, how about you don't? And then shut down right in the middle of that segment. It was long. So I'm not going to redo the entire thing. But what I am going to do is kind of summarize the gist of my thoughts, which is that we have had an outbreak of just insipid think pieces, essentially arguing that, hey, we need to bring the farthest elements of conservative thought into mainstream or even academic spaces. Here's an article in The Argument. Yeah, we're going to have to do DEI for conservatives. Basically saying, actually it's good if we bring fascist-minded intellectuals and such into our ranks and treat their ideas on par with the ideas of, normal, sane people. And this is obviously, for a whole host of reasons, just a terrible idea. The ideas of fascists are not meritorious. They have no place in a civil society. Within the bounds of us talking about how we all can live with one another, much like how Ezra Klein wrote this op-ed or opinion show, I guess. It's an opinion on the Ezra Klein show for the New York Times. Few umbrellas there, but we are going to have to live here with one another. And the answer to that is if we're going to live here with one another, one side can't be fascists. One side can't be unabashedly parroting fascist propaganda. Fascism is exclusionary. It is destructive. It seeks to otherize elements of society. This is not sustainable. You can't have a bunch of white supremacists and then people come into town and they're like, oh, yeah, well, sure, those are the white supremacists, but, you're going to have to figure out how to live with them. No, you live with them by expelling them from mainstream. You live with them by otherizing their ideas until they change their minds. Because white supremacy and fascism and bigotry of all sorts of flavors can't be tolerated in a tolerant society wherein we have people of varying ideologies and varying religious beliefs and varying moral systems or social systems. The issue here is that the basis of a tolerant society in which people can coexist alongside one another is that there needs to be a foundational agreement on respecting the humanity of other people in society. And fascists rip that to shreds. They take that agreement and they rip it up. Their ideology is antithetical to living in harmony with other people. And so when we're talking about this issue, seeing Ezra Klein and people of his centrist ilk posting these think pieces and saying, well, we all got to live together, and Charlie Kirk was doing politics the right way. And it's Charlie Kirk had a list of academics and professors that he was encouraging children to record in order to snitch on them so that they could be harassed out of their jobs, so that they could be harassed out of their home. And many people were, predominantly academics of color. And it really just kind of goes to show this entire thing is hollow as hell. When we talk, right, about Charlie Kirk and folks like him, this movement that they made is not one that can live in harmony with anything that remotely disagrees with it. It is a movement of extermination. And so it's really frustrating, to say the least, to see this proliferation, because let's be real here, centrists who are publishing things like, oh, well, more fascists need to be put into the mainstream. I'm sorry, that's just conservative. That is a conservative idea. You are capitulating to the conservative fascistic moment, or authoritarian moment, if you will. Oh yeah. I agree. I find his ideology odious in the extreme, and that's why everyone should pay attention to it all the time. That's crazy. That's like saying I hate McDonald's, so we should just have only McDonald's ads 24/7 on everything. Like that doesn't make sense. And so what really got to me is Ezra Klein's recent talking points. And I'm not talking about the talking points about him imploring Democrats in order to like hold the line when it comes to the government shutdown, because I agree with that point. I think Democrats do need to hold the line when it comes to a government shutdown. But when we're talking about these Ezra Klein neoliberals, abundance-pilled motherfuckers, they're just straight up conservative. I mean, I'm going to play you a segment from this interview he did with Tim Miller on the Bulwark podcast, and I was just flabbergasted by this. And so here we go.
On the kind of gravity of the moment, like some of it is in their posture and and how are you acting, right? Like some of it is in are there other ways to throw sand in the gears in the Senate and otherwise for some of their actions? And I agree with you that there's more things to do. Another is like the political objectives of a party that sees the other party as an existential threat, right? Like you would imagine that a political party that sees the other party as an existential threat would want to try new things, not just tactically and
Oh, and to be clear, Tim Miller is a conservative. Like this is a conversation between two conservatives. It's just that Tim Miller is honest about being a conservative and like is still, you know, in kind of that classic conservative Reaganite conservative bent, but like the fact that these two can talk and their politics are indistinguishable from one another should tell you an awful lot about the kind of politics that Ezra Klein is peddling.
But nationally, as far as trying to appeal to more people.
You're executing a topic segue here.
Yeah, we're doing a topic segue.
Yeah, I see you.
How did I do?
Good, I thought.
And I like you on how they should try new things. I'm all for you should try new things like try lefty populist shit and throw those candidates up there. That's fine with me. I'm not that's not my cup of tea per se, but I'm interested in Graham Plattner in that model. But it's also try more culturally conservative people that have wrong thoughts on social issues and run them in red states. See if that works.
Like Tim Miller again is like, well, you know, like let's throw some social conservatives out there, see how they do in red states. And it's kind of like, I mean, I understand why an out and out conservative would suggest that, because again, social conservatism doesn't bother a conservative. But I want you all to pay attention to how Ezra Klein responds.
Any better. This was one of the points that you were making, because I said earlier that was a lightning rod. You said maybe Democrats should have pro-life candidates in red states, be more comfortable with that. A lot of Democrats pointed out that.
Holy shit. Video game Valorant, thank you for the 26 tier 1 subs. Also, Love as in Space, thank you for the 10 tier 1 subs. That is incredibly generous of you. My God, thank you very, very much. And I should point out there that is apparently something that Twitch is running with Valorant. I just want to be clear that I am not sponsored by Valorant, but Twitch has some kind of promotion thing going on with Valorant. So yeah, just as an FYI about that.
Pro-life ballot initiatives have not done that well in red states. Maybe there's a different topic
or that they have
pick that was the same point.
Pro-life initiatives.
Yeah. Yes, like in Kansas and Missouri, they'd passed ballot initiatives that were pro-choice, essentially. That were. And so anyway, maybe the nitpick is on that particular issue of abortion, but the premise.
Can we just like stop? Can we just stop and like listen to what these two chuckle nuts just said, like uncritically?
Was a lightning rod them in red states. Conservative, if that works any better. This was one of the points that you were making, because I said earlier that was a lightning rod. You said maybe Democrats should have pro-life candidates in red states, be more comfortable with that. A lot of Democrats pointed out that pro-life ballot initiatives have not done that well in red states. Maybe there's a different topic
or that they have
pick that was the same point.
Pro-life initiatives.
Yeah. Yes, like in Kansas and Missouri, they'd passed ballot initiatives that were pro-choice, essentially. That were. And so anyway,
I just. Okay, so you acknowledge, right? You acknowledge that like, oh yeah, we should, try running some socially conservatives in red states. And then you directly mention the fact that like Ezra made an appeal to, run pro-life Democrats, run anti-abortion Dems in red states, right? And just to throw out there, like, people want abortion rights. Ohio voted to enshrine abortion rights. Kansas voted to keep abortion rights. Missouri voted to keep abortion rights. Like, it's not even close in these states. And it's like, well, in Missouri, like, lawmakers want to put it back on the ballot so that they can not implement abortion rights in the state. But, like, to make that appeal when, like specifically, like, say you're Ezra Klein and you're writing about this in one of the most prominent newspapers in the country, and you say something like this, and it's like, if you just look up how those issues poll in those states, abortion is a winning issue. People want abortion rights. People want bodily autonomy. If you have more bodily autonomy as a corpse than a person in a state with anti-abortion laws, people hate that. And the solution is giving people their bodily autonomy back. Voters want it, and that should be what Dems run on. Like, in terms of like, oh, well, part of a politician's job is making their position, popular. That work has already been done on abortion rights. Why would you say let's just run pro-life Democrat? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense on any level of analysis unless you are in favor of conservative policy. In Missouri, the Secretary of State keeps losing lawsuits because they refuse to admit their attempt to overturn the abortion amendment is an attempt to overturn the abortion amendment. It's so dumb. It's so fucking dumb. Like, I this made me so mad. But let's see how Ezra responds here.
Maybe the nitpick is on that particular issue of abortion, but the premise to me seems obvious. And while there seems to be an excitement on the Democrats for trying out the Graham Plattner type candidates, where there's no evidence of them actually winning in red states, there seems to be no excitement for trying out John Bel Edwards type candidates, where there is some record of success.
It's worth thinking.
Yeah. Tim Miller, like, oh man, fuck.
Appealing to his voters.
Oh, sorry.
All they care about is banning seeing things they don't like on TV, like gay or trans people.
It really does kind of boil down to that, Rondo. Thank you for the $5 dono. Like, the thing that is incredible to me is that you watch a politics podcast like Tim Miller's over at the Bulwark, right? They get a lot of resistance libs watching, and then they do this insidious shit of like, oh yeah, I don't even know how popular, working class policies might be in red states. And it's just kind of like, what do you mean? There are workers in red states. They want more rights. They want higher pay. They want better protections. What are you talking about? Women in red states don't want abortions. No, they do. They do. They want autonomy over their bodies. This idea, like, oh, well, we don't want this left-leaning Democrat shit in our state. We want to keep electing Republicans who will poison our water and our air and the very soil beneath our feet. What is interesting here is an inability to really reckon with the fact that a lot of Democrat voters are not, in fact, married to these socially conservative ideas, but rather Democratic voters care about the fundamental policy positions. They care about that shit. They care about Medicare for all. They care about, trans rights. They care about all of these different issues. And they care about the economic policy. And it's not just why can't we just run a conservative as a Democrat? And it's because Democrats actually give a shit. Democrats actually care. If you're running a conservative as a Democrat, we all understand, oh, you're running a conservative as a Democrat. Oh, great. We need another Joe Manchin to torpedo our Medicare for All bills. We need another Kristen Sinema to torpedo our, minimum wage increase. What are you talking about? What use is there to Democrats for having conservative Democrats other than to say we won? If the cost of winning is your ability to pass meaningful legislation, you didn't fucking win. It's like they think we in Missouri are unchangeably Republican and can't be moved left. It's so tiring. That's the thing, right? Like, poll numbers shift all the time. Treating the polls like they're sacrosanct, treating the polls like, oh, well, this is just where the electorate is. It could never possibly move, especially in the time of Trump, is just ludicrous to me. It is just ludicrous. The current administration and the current Congress are doing stuff so unpopular that we're seeing a lack of support.
I think a lot of neo
like we've never seen before.
Confuse being tired of the argument with being tired of the position. The rhetoric is toxic and tiring, but nobody wants us to just be conservative to silence it.
Yeah, it's so fucking frustrating.
Thinking about why Graham Plattner is a candidate in Maine, and we have to think about Maine at all.
Yeah.
Because Maine is a fairly blue state at this point. It has a Democratic governor. It has the other senator caucuses with the Democrats. And it has Susan Collins, who is a Republican and is pro-choice. And one way she has managed to remain a Republican in Maine is that she is pro-choice. But what she does is she votes for John Thune, and before that for Mitch McConnell for majority leader, and then confirms pro-life justices to the Supreme Court, which is part of how we ended up with Dobbs. And so I'm just like, how did that sentence come out of your mouth, man? I just is a Republican and is pro-choice. And one way she has managed to remain a Republican. And the fact that he's like smugly smiling as he says this, no flicker of recognition in his face whatsoever. In Maine, is that she is pro-choice. But what she does is she votes for John Thune, and before that for Mitch McConnell for majority leader, and then confirms pro-life justices to the Supreme Court, which is part of how we ended up with Dobbs. Oh, okay. So, yeah. All right.
I realized why Ezra really annoys me. He's centrist Ben Shapiro, a profoundly stupid human being whose only gift is sounded smart to other profoundly stupid people.
It's true, Paladin. There is like a subgenre of NPR show host that Ezra Klein like fits to a T, which is like liberals who think that who are high on their own farts, essentially, and like don't actually know that much about a topic, and instead are just getting high on their own farts and the brain cells dying as they go. You know, it's true. It's true. It's just that the way Ben Shapiro bills himself and the way that Ezra Klein bills himself, very different because their audiences are different, but it's basically the same premise, you know? But yeah, Susan Collins, she has so much success in Maine because of her pro-choice stances that she's not willing to back up when the rubber meets the road in Congress. Why would we want allies along those lines in Congress? Why would we want that? And Ezra Klein's argument undoubtedly would be like, well, I mean, if it's a choice between an ally like that and like an enemy, like you want an ally like that. But it's like, I just reject that binary option. I reject the binary option considering how voters in these states actually work, what they actually support when you look at their needs on the ground, when you look at like how they organize in their auto factories despite being in red states. Like, I'm sorry, I reject these ideas. I reject that it is a choice between, oh man, either someone who hates you 100% or someone who hates you, 70%. I reject that. And so I'm all for Graham Plattner, right? Graham Plattner seems to be like a candidate who is doing really, really well
at figuring out how to do attentional politics. I mean, we'll see how he performs in Maine. I don't want to count my chickens there. We've watched people be very certain they're about to beat Susan Collins and then fail. Right? That's the story.
Or very certain he can beat Susan Janet Mills, and there's another the Maine beer company candidates in there. Like who the hell knows?
Right,
Maine politics are
don't
finicky.
Know, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen there yet. But I'm all for Graham Plantner. I think the telling thing about Maine politics is Susan Collins.
Right.
The idea that a Democrat could win in Maine is not surprising. The idea that a Republican has held on in Maine is surprising, and she has done it by being more culturally liberal than the rest of her caucus.
I would argue that is only a very small part, because I'm going to go out on a limb here and surmise. I don't know this firsthand, of course, but I'm going to surmise that people in Maine aren't little brainlets. I'm going to surmise that they are, in fact, smart, intelligent people and have long understood that Susan Collins doing some kind of hollow positioning as a pro-choice member of Congress while voting alongside and for pro-life individuals and policies, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that they've known for a long time that she's kind of full of shit in that regard. I'm also just going to throw out there that, like, one of the reasons she's been able to hold on is because she is plugged into the conservative funding apparatus, the big money, the dark money groups, the super PACs, etc. I'm going to surmise here that it's not just, her positioning on issues, it's the money that floods into her race to keep her as a known quantity that her biggest donors can reliably pay to be in their corner. Like, it's not just her positioning. It is far more the political machinery that she's been sitting on for decades. And we have now just reached a breaking point in Maine politics. As far as I understand it, not an expert on the politics of Maine, but it seems like Maine has hit a breaking point where that political machinery that Susan Collins has constructed and relied on is no longer going to be sufficient when compared with the dissatisfaction of working people in the state of Maine. Because those people have been getting screwed over for as long as Susan Collins has been in office. So I don't understand this. Like, I would describe it as a deliberately partial analysis from Ezra Klein, and I should say I do understand it. I just think he is being deliberately obtuse about the entire thing.
So I've been thinking about the Affordable Care Act. As you mentioned, I used to cover healthcare a lot. When the Affordable Care Act passed, there were about 40 pro-life Democrats in the House. 40. Democrats held Senate seats in Arkansas, in Louisiana, in
Paladin lost. That is one of the most accurate burns. I can feel him going to a used bookstore and buying every smart-sounding book he can find to curate that shelf image. Oh God, that is 100% accurate. Oh God.
Dakota, in South Dakota, in Ohio, in
Montana,
West Virginia.
Benny Loco, I would
Montana,
need to know more.
In Indiana. I think to a lot of people, I've been thinking about this in the email I've been getting recently. I think for a lot of Democrats, to twist the old line about capitalism, which you may have heard, right? It's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. Yeah. It has become easier to imagine the end of America than Democrats winning a Senate seat in Arkansas. Like they just it's become like a completely inconceivable.
I wonder, I'm just throwing this out there. How much money are Democrats spending to try and win a seat in Arkansas? Just out of curiosity. What is the political machinery? What is like the ground game? The base of support that Democrats have worked to cultivate in Arkansas? Zero. Exactly, Zaranjoy. It's zero. It's exactly almost nothing. When Ezra Klein is putting this out there, and he's like, well, the only way to win is to run a conservative as a Democrat. No, this is disingenuous bullshit. This is just disingenuous bullshit. The real answer is you need to put actual effort in, because there are Democrats on the ground in Arkansas. who are struggling to like come together and have the resources they need in order to mobilize their communities. But like, if you're looking around at this country, if you're looking at like the Stop Oligarchy tour and you're like, how can Bernie Sanders just summon 35,000 people to a Wendy's in the middle of nowhere? Like, it's because people in these areas of the country that Democrats have all too often overlooked need help. They need help because they have a boot on their neck from corporate America that is choking them out. They like Walmart is rolling in and killing all of their mom and pop stores. You got Dollar Tree moving in and killing off all of the ones that hang on in towns sufficiently far enough away from Walmart. You've got all this going on and so little support from the Democratic establishment, who will then smugly sit back and be like, oh, yeah, it's easier to imagine the end of America than electing a Democrat in Arkansas. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I know that's a good soundbite for you or whatever, or at least you think it is, but like, I don't know, I feel like that's an absolute failure of imagination if you can't imagine building a grassroots ground game in places like Arkansas in order to get people excited to vote for a Democrat. You can make that happen. It's not impossible. Haley Schaffner is in Arkansas fighting her ass off to get a Senate seat. I don't know much about this person.
I grew up here, on this farm, in these fields. Started working them when I was 10 years old, and spent nearly a decade doing everything I could to keep this farm running. There's no place that means more to me. I'm Hallie Schaffner, a sixth-generation Arkansas farmer and small business owner. But this year, I had to shut our farm down. Because like hundreds of other Arkansas farmers, no matter how hard we worked or what crops we planted, it wasn't enough.
This year has been so hard for Arkansas farmers.
Farmers have little to no hope of breaking even this year.
And while we were fighting to keep our farms afloat, Tom Cotton was fighting against us.
Oh, take
voting
out that
against the Farm Bill.
Tom Cotton is one of, like, genuinely one of the most evil members of Congress. Like, he's cartoonishly evil. If she has any shot of taking him out of the congressional running, like, 100% of my support.
Twice. Maybe he'd know how much we need it if he stopped to listen to real Arkansans. But he hasn't. Instead of holding town halls to hear from us, he hosts fancy dinners for the people who are funding his political career, while voting for trillions in tax cuts for billionaires and land barons that are driving up prices while we struggle just to get by. It's a system rigged against Arkansans by both Republicans and Democrats, and I've had enough of it. We need a senator who knows what it's like to bet the future on a field, who will fight to protect our health care and bring costs down so we can afford gas, groceries, and the mortgage, who will actually be here in Arkansas. That's not Tom Cotton, but it is me. And that's why I'm running for the U.S. Senate, because there's nothing I'd rather do than farm. But if I can't farm, I'm gonna fight for our farms, for Arkansas, and for you.
I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty all right. That was good. Good solid ad. Here, let's just take a look at a longer form interview from more recently. I know we're getting derailed, but this is a good kind of derail.
70s wouldn't be at risk. And knowing that my dad will eventually need memory care, which is extremely expensive and not covered by Medicare, I knew that wasn't a risk that we could afford to take. And I remember calling my mom and telling her updated farm provisions is not the answer. We have to have updated farm provisions that don't just continue to incentivize commodity production, which I'm all for, I was in commodity production, but also incentivizes the production of real food. We have to be able to diversify agriculture in this state. Farmers need options. We need to be able to choose more crops when the crops that we have become unprofitable. And we just don't have that because we don't have an updated farm bill. I mean, my argument is that in the 1980s, Now, the farm crisis in the 1980s.
Yeah, we're going to
was
talk
caused by a
about
lot
that
of
later,
things.
Ms. Molina.
But one of the things was that, and Nixon's Secretary of Agriculture, this is kind of getting into the weeds, but Nixon's Secretary of Agriculture said, get big or get out. Farm fence row to fence row, which is the prioritization of commodity production at the highest volume that you can get. And we did that, partly led to the farm crisis. And then we did the same thing again. We continued this idea of farming fence row to fence row, high volume production of commodity crops. And here we are again in another farm crisis 50 years later.
I'm not gonna lie, this is, this isn't necessarily going to be like the barnstormer, like just bringing down the house kind of talk. But I think to farmers in Arkansas and farm folk in Arkansas, that all made a whole lot of sense and is probably extremely compelling. I'm going to guess that maybe that one of the most common complaints among farmers in Arkansas and largely across Middle America is this control and restriction on what farmers can plant. There's no policy stuff on her website. Yeah, which is why I was looking at an interview. Even if she doesn't win, she will get it talking. Yeah, and that's true. And that's why I think it's good she's challenging Tom Cotton. But let me put it this way. I do think it is good to replace Tom Cotton with basically anyone who is going to maintain a pulse through a full term, Even if she sat and did literally nothing, she would be helping the country heal overall compared to Tom Cotton being in that seat, right? But it sounds like she actually knows. It sounds like she actually knows about the situation facing farmers. Like she doesn't strike me as someone who's carpetbagging from out of state and like just moved in to take over the family farm and doesn't really know what she's doing. No, this lady seems like she's got farming in like her every pore, So I tried to look up polling to see where she is relative to Tom Cotton, but no polling available for this race at this point. That being said, Tom Cotton does have a ground game running right now, and it is in fact one of those things that could make the difference. So if you all want to join the campaign or sign up to do door knocking or what have you, on her website, I gotta be honest, it's frustrating here to look at the campaign website, and this is a source of constant frustration for me when I look at Democrats running across the country. Take action with Team Haley, and it is okay. The only option is to donate. Free bit of advice for campaigns that are running anywhere in the country. Have a section of your website dedicated not just to donations, but to volunteers. There are people all across this country that want to help you win and help you be successful. There are people who will drive in order to volunteer to door knock. There are people who will do digital online phone banking anywhere in this country because they believe in defeating this fascist movement. Okay? So I'm just imploring folks, unfortunately, this setup is very common with Democratic, grassroots Democratic websites, largely because some campaigns do not know how to use volunteers. And so it's one of those things where we got to make reliance on the grassroots one of the core components of launching a campaign like this. Not the money, but the people. This is a sign of an unserious campaign. It's definitely the sign of like a long shot campaign surrounded by people who don't really know how to run their campaign. Like, this is a common mistake. It's an obvious mistake. But mainstream Democrats do this mistake all the time. All the time.
Now wait a cotton picking minute.
Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. Very much appreciated. Welcome. But let's just continue to listen to Ezra Klein here for a moment. You know, because you can run people with decent politics in red states. You are not shackled to conservatism if you want to win in a red state. Like, I've said this for a long time, and I'm going to say it again. Like, if you have better ideas, make the case for those ideas. Voters will respond to that. Why do they do that, though? Because the conventional wisdom is that you aren't going to get volunteers, and that you need money. The main driver for a lot of campaigns, Comrade Girl 2018, is the desire for money so that they can run ads on television and radio to reach older demographics, and those older demographics will then just call up the campaign office directly and be like, how can I volunteer? Or they will just donate, and then more ads can run, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, the ultimate breakdown is just that the emphasis for the last 30, 40 years has been on campaign fundraising. Because the conventional wisdom is that campaign fundraising beats word of mouth, beats door knocking, beats phone banking. And it doesn't. It's just really, really hard to get people out to volunteer, to door knock and phone bank. And a lot of people would rather just give money rather than do that work. Yeah, Citizens United supercharged this.
Conceivable thing. But not that long ago, we had Senate seats in Arkansas. Not that long ago, we had a Democratic president from Arkansas. And so you have to begin, I think if you take how bad this is very seriously, and I really do, I think you have to say politics is about winning power. It's not about only choosing strategies I'm personally comfortable with.
Yes, politics is about winning power. But how you are then going to use that power really matters. So when we're talking, it's not just power for power's sake. It's not power in a vacuum. It is power that is going to be put to do something. And what that something is matters, regardless of what label you slap on the team that is in power and holds that power. Not long ago, we had a Democratic president from Arkansas. Yeah, over 20 years ago. Yeah. God.
Unironically, we need door knockers for door knocking. Otherwise, we'll end up with Ezra Kleining.
I just more like Ezra reclining. Yeah, nailed it. Thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. Yeah, part of what angers me about this, right, is that when he talks about us having a president from Arkansas, we got Bill Clinton. We got Bill Clinton, the neoliberal. The guy who just did conservative policy after conservative policy after conservative policy. Dude who signed into law the Super Predators bill. Guy, what? Okay, and this is an argument in favor of your position? Patrick Lucas, thank you for the gifted membership. But the guy who is a part and parcel with mainstreaming this particular political poison that has led us to Donald Trump, that guy? That seems bad, actually.
I am very, very, very pro-choice. My wife had medically horrific pregnancies. There's almost nothing that I feel more emotionally intense about as that a woman should be able to, a family should be able to choose whether or not to go through that. It would be very dangerous for her to be pregnant again. Have we protected reproductive rights using the political strategies we have employed over the past 15 years? We have not. We have failed. And I think core to my view.
And the solution to that is doubling down on more politicians that will fail us.
Imagine signing the Super Predators bill while hanging out with Epstein.
They probably chuckled about that. Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs.
Is failure. We are failing. We are failing to protect trans people. We are failing to protect immigrants. We are failing to protect everybody we say we are here to protect. And we are failing to protect them because we have lost power.
Well, no, actually. There are a number of different ways people in positions of power who are Democrats could be protecting all of those things, advocating for all of those things, moving the needle on all of those issues right now. And if they went out and talked to them, if they went out and talked about these issues and stood up for these issues. And what we see is instead a large number of Democrats coming out of the woodwork to say, oh, maybe conservatives have a point about this transgender stuff. That's not, I'm sorry, that is not derived from Democrats not having power. That is derived from Democrats being weak and cowardly. That is derived from people who are chasing after power, unaware of how power actually functions, how power is actually derived from their political positions and the way people support them. The majority of people in this country support trans rights. The majority of people in this country despise what Donald Trump is doing. The majority of people in this country hate the tariffs. The majority of people in this country hate the military deployments. And the fact that Democrats aren't getting up there every day and banging on these drums is not a downstream result of them not having power. It is simply a downstream result of cowardly behavior. This is a moment that is revealing to us the quality of our elected officials, and far too many of them have been found wanting.
I think losing power in that way and failing in the way we have and watching the consequences be as bad as they have been should force us in a disciplined fashion to ask, what do we need to do to win it back? And that means expand.
Like, I'm sorry, like his argument here, like, oh, it should force us to ask the question, what can we do to win it back? And then his answer is throw trans people under the bus harder. This is all downstream of our result to not hold on to power. So that, therefore we need to throw trans people under the bus even harder. Like, what are you talking about, man? What are you talking about? Like, guys, whenever you hear a Democrat talking about trans children in sports, that entire talking point was devised by and injected into our political discourse by a conservative operative named Christopher Rufo. If you hear Democrats talking about trans kids in sports and capitulating to the conservative framing on that issue, they are capitulating to the conservative framing on that issue. And I just don't understand, like, the cognitive dissonance that leads to Ezra Klein being the way he is here. And I have to say, the thing that would make more sense to me is that there is no cognitive dissonance here for Ezra Klein, and that he is just deliberately doing this as, like, some kind of as some kind of attempt to fracture the left. And that's really kind of all I can take away with it if I'm going to assume he's operating in good faith. Everyone in my area loves the tariffs. When I pointed out the higher prices, they just wave their hands and say it's trans terrorists. You cannot win the average ruraloid. I don't like using that word. I'm not going to use that again. It just felt bad in my mouth. Their brains are broken. I do agree. There is a certain segment of the American population that has their brains completely and utterly broken, and I don't know how we come back from that. But I will say that is not representative of where the majority of this country is at.
Ending the map on which we can play. Barack Obama ran.
It expands the map on which we can play. You can play literally anywhere in the country. Where you deploy resources as a political party is on the political party. You can play in any district in the country. This is infuriating shit because I know so many people listen to this man. So many people in positions of power, people like Hakeem Jeffries, people like Chuck Schumer, they actually give a shit about what Ezra Klein has to say. And so when he puts out these feckless, cowardly talking points, they run with them.
For office as both a Democrat who is much better than other Democrats at persuading people who thought they would disagree with him that he liked them and he understood them and they had a place.
I'm sorry, I missed the
For office as both
Barack Obama,
a Democrat who is much better than other Democrats at persuading people who thought they would disagree with him that he liked them and he understood them and they had a place with him. But he also, I think all of us thought Barack Obama believed in gay marriage.
Yeah.
But in 2008, Barack Obama ran.
I just, oh man, this is a terrible, terrible example. Okay. So when we're talking about Ezra Klein and Barack Obama, keep in mind Barack Obama is Ezra Klein's special little baby boy, right? And Obama is a great orator. He is a great speaker. And I would go out and hazard a guess here. Put out a point. Ezra, he's not a leftist. Ezra is a centrist neolib. No, my entire position here is that he is not even a centrist neolib. He is a conservative. He is doing the work of conservatives, right? So I reject not only his association with the left, but I reject it whole cloth across the entire left spectrum. And so Obama didn't convince conservatives that, like, oh, he liked them. That's not what Obama did. Obama rallied the liberal base. When you look at the numbers and of the people who turned out for those elections, it was young people. It was, people just becoming engaged in politics who were excited about his message of hope and change. It was an activation of that liberal base to a degree that hadn't been seen in my lifetime. And it was also winning over some independents. But this narrative that, like, Obama won over, like, this whole huge chunk of conservative voters is just a lie.
Do fascism hard enough?
I mean, that's basically Ezra Klein's position here is, what if we did a softer conservatism, And so I just, when we look at what he's saying here, what bothers me a lot is just this. And he was around back then. He was like a policy wonk online, posting blogs. Like, I remember when Obama was running, there were literally parties in the streets by conservatives, like burning him and beating him in effigy. It was nuts. And like, it's I don't know. It's interesting to see unfold here in all of its horrible panoply.
To somebody opposing gay marriage. And that put him in place to name Supreme Court justices who would then create a constitutional right to gay marriage. This idea that
How many Americans are even liberal, by the way? I mean, I would argue that the vast majority of Americans are liberal. They believe in, and not in like in like a baseline, like they believe in a certain amount of egalitarianism. They believe in a certain amount of like limitation on the free market, et cetera, et cetera. But like, the neoliberalism has been tried and it has been found severely insufficient, except as a slip and slide to fascism.
Politics.
More lying from our politicians. Yes. Huh? Yeah. More hiding the ball from politicians. As we're
more working with public opinion as it exists.
Okay, I'm just
is the way I'd put it. Right. The people who said Seth Moulton was like a Nazi collaborator after he said that Democrats need to accept that you should not have full trans participation across the sex line in sports.
Oh, hey, remember how I just brought up that example of like trans kids in sports and how it was created deliberately by a Republican operative as a wedge issue to try and break apart like the left coalition? And here we have conservatives trying to use it even further to break that apart. Like, even his framing here, right, is, oh yeah, people called Seth Moulton a Nazi for saying, he didn't think that like, trans girls should play in girls' sports in high school. Like, that framing, that like, oh, people called him a Nazi. Okay, but like, what was the actual like reasonable, level-headed response to that? That was far more prevalent and common, which was pointing out that he was embracing a transphobic narrative and attempting to say that Democrats should all do likewise, right? Like, the main thrust of this wasn't like a hyperbolic like take that you can just dismiss out of hand. It was, in fact, the accurate breakdown of what he was doing and what the implications of that were. And so when Ezra Klein is framing it this way, that is a deliberate choice. Understand that, like, Maybe to some degree here, what I'm doing is going to war with this veneer of liberalism that Ezra Klein has attempted to cloak himself with. But I find this, earlier Paladin Lost made the comparison between Ezra Klein and Ben Shapiro. I'm going to also draw a parallel to Tim Pool. Because Tim Pool is a very dumb man who understands that his bread and butter is being a fence sitter, being a milquetoast neoliberal fence sitter. He understands his role in things. And I think Ezra Klein is just a slightly smarter Tim Pool, who is able and capable of gussying up his fence sitting and his conservative leanings through, in order to appeal to conservatives and also conservative Democrats.
The way to protect trans people is for Democrats to be in power. And that means being willing to give on issues that 80% of the country is against you on.
Yeah.
That's crazy. From Pew Research. And I just want to throw this out there, which is that, Ezra Klein is talking about, oh, look, 80% of people agree that you should side against trans children. But, you can very clearly see that the polling shifted as a direct result of, the last 3 years, between 2022 and 2025. 3 years of intense propagandizing shifted public opinion. It didn't, in fact, remain stagnant. So it should become clear here that if public opinion can sway against trans people, it can also sway in favor of trans people. And as a Democrat, your job is to make those positions popular. Your job is to push back on this absolute bullshit. Your job is not to compromise on civil rights. Your job is not to weakly and cowardly run away from supporting the inherent humanity of your constituents. You're supposed to goddamn stand up for what's right. People respect that. People do not respect kowtowing to bigotry to chase what is perceived as popular. There is nothing, even when you were a kid, that it all holds true. There was nothing more pathetic than somebody who chased popularity for popularity's sake. And that holds true in politics as well. The far more influential thing is to stake your flag in positions you actually fucking believe in and defend that ground. Don't you think those trans women are asking for too much freedom? Trans women won't be free until the feminization camps are built, inshallah.
And I think that the sense we have that doing that kind of politics is betrayal, that it is abandoning people. I just think we have so many people. It's like we assume Twitter is politics. Politics is about winning power and then using that power well. And sometimes to win that power, you have to have it.
Well, yeah, wait. Politics is about winning power and using that power well. So, in other words, the actual political positions of the people who are going to win that power matter. Oh, that's crazy. That's wild.
Big enough that it includes real disagreement, but it includes agreement on the key things, like who should be majority leader, or what kinds of people should be on the Supreme Court. So this is my argument. I mean, you can pick the issue. We should be disciplined about it. Kansas is not where I meant you should run a pro-life candidate. Kansas is a place, as people noted, where you've had actually great success on reproductive rights as a wedge issue. But choose your things. Immigration is another, where we've gotten way out of step with the public. After Donald Trump, he polarized us against him on immigration.
Yeah. What's crazy about... look at Donald Trump. He polarized the country against immigrants. Support for immigrants is at one of the all-time highs right now in this country. Donald Trump is lower in support on immigration than basically he's ever been. And when you're arguing like, oh man, we need to come more in lockstep with where the American public is on immigration. How about we just like talk about how immigration is good? I know, crazy idea. What if we just talked about how immigration is good? For whatever reason, Democrats are afraid to talk about immigration as an issue. But the reality is it builds our economy. It builds our cultural tapestry. It builds our, tolerance for differences. It introduces us to new ideas. It makes us a better country. And it makes more jobs. And it raises wages. Literally on every single aspect of society. It improves us. Our communities benefit. And so it just seems to me that Democrats need to go out there and actually make that case, as scary as it may be. Because in the absence of that case, Republicans have just injected insane propaganda, like undocumented immigrants are taking your Social Security money. That's just a lie. But it's a commonly believed lie in Republican circles. It's just a lie. And we need to push back against lies in politics. We need to push back against, essentially liars like Ezra Klein, who are trying to push a flawed and inaccurate narrative.
And we began debating if we should decriminalize illegal border crossing. Did that put us in position in the long run to protect immigrants? No, it helped elect Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And now immigrants are in trouble. They have not been in this country in a long time. So I just the thing I'm trying to,
I'm sorry. And I wasn't even going to bring this up until later in the stream. But like one of the things that really bothers me, right, is this idea of like, oh, well, immigrants in this country are under threat they haven't been in a long time. And to an extent that's true, to an extent that is true, right? The time of danger is immensely increased for immigrants in this country. But I also want to throw out there that our immigration system for far too long has been cruel, has been full of abuses. It has been full of rape. It has been full of torture. This is why, by the way, the South Koreans who were detained by ICE for 8 days have their country doing an investigation into how they were treated by the United States. And it's because any sane individual that witnesses this system understands it as torture. I covered this a while ago, but a woman who wrote an entire anthropology of concentration camps, an anthropological history of concentration camps, since their inception during the transatlantic slave trade in Cuba. Facilities like Alligator Alcatraz and Mosquitoes, they've weaponized environments in order to act as torture in place of human hands. So the conditions are being deliberately fostered in these immigrant detention facilities to torture individuals just by virtue of them existing in those spaces. That's not to mention the physical torture, deprivation, the lack of health care, etc. Not to mention any of that. But it's worse. ICE warden put transgender detainees into forced labor program. This came out today via federal complaint. In Louisiana, 4 detainees were put into a forced labor group by the warden of their facility, where they were forced to be separated from the other inmates and do labor against their will. All while the warden and a certain group of guards followed them around, sexually harassed them, beat them, etc. Detention, let's see. Yeah, according to complaints filed by Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, the ACLU, and the National Immigration Project, the abuse took place between 2023 and 2025 across 2 administrations. Detention center and ICE employees allegedly subjected the 4 detainees to sexual assault, forcible touching, groping, physical abuse, and denial of medical attention. And this is very common in our system. This was common under Joe Biden, and it's even more prevalent now. So when we talk about like, oh, we need to get tougher on immigration, like, no, we don't actually. Our system is already classifiable as torture by any sane observer. And it is interesting to me that Ezra Klein's position is we need to bring Democrats more in lockstep of where the electorate is. Because his point is we need to get harder on immigration.
In a way, weirdly do is raise the status of doing politics as we've traditionally understand it. And that is working to build a large coalition across disagreement so you can win power.
I'm sorry, that's not right. Politics is about feeling good about yourself and feeling superior. Your point is so obvious. It's kind of like, I want to move on because it's like we could have a heated agreement about how right we are on this. But so my one follow-up question though is like, it's so obvious that what do you attribute to the fact that there's so much resistance to it? And I'm not talking about among rank and file people on the internet commenting on your posts. I'm talking about among Democratic strategists. Like this is so like, why are Democratic strategists putting up generic D candidates in red states time after time, thinking that the result is going to be different? It's insanity.
I mean, like the question here and the purpose of turning the conversation in this way is like, well, why can't we just continue running more conservative candidates? And the answer is, y'all have been doing that. Like, a lot of Democrats have been attempting to lean into the social conservatism. That has already happened. It's just that the generic Democrats are the ones leaning into the conservatism in a lot of these areas because of the consultant class. The consultant class, when it comes to politics, is the one advising these politicians to lean into their conservative voters. It's not difficult to figure that out. They talk about it openly.
In the literal definition.
I think the analysis you need here is sociological, not political. I think that political strategy for parties is downstream of political culture. The first thing they worry about is what the people around them will think about them and how they will be treated and if they can get future jobs and so on.
Yeah.
And I think it has become incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, I know this to be true. It has become incredibly uncomfortable, less so now than it was maybe a couple years ago, for Democrats to step out on these issues. I mean, I mentioned Seth Moulton, who's a Democratic congressman from Massachusetts, a couple minutes ago after the 2024 election, when he says, look, I don't want to see my daughters, playing sports and getting, run over by somebody born male on the field. He gets a huge amount of back.
He said this very reasonable transphobic thing. And he got backlash on that. And it's like, yeah, because what he said was, one, capitulation in the larger narrative sense to the conservative framing. And also, it's predicated on fear-mongering against trans people in general, a fear-mongering that has no basis in the actual facts. None whatsoever. He's giving away his own grift. That's what's interesting to me about this entire arc for Ezra Klein. In my mind, he's flown too close to the sun and his wings are in the process of melting.
Backlash. He's condemned by, people in the sort of Democratic Party in the district. A local college says they won't send interns to his office anymore. He's compared to a Nazi collaborator. Nothing happens to him.
Again, like, oh, he's compared to a Nazi collaborator. How about you engage with what the actual substance of the criticism was? Because it wasn't, he's a Nazi because he doesn't support trans people. It was, oh, look, he's embracing bigotry. Like, that's full stop. And there's no engagement on that particular aspect of the conversation. It's just, oh, he was called a Nazi anyway.
He's fine, but that's very unpleasant for people.
And then he's like, well, then, but what happened to him? Nothing whatsoever. Nothing whatsoever happened to him. He's fine, and in fact, his career is thriving. But that's very unpleasant. It's unpleasant for people to be mean at you on Twitter, and like, yeah, okay, do it. Like, all right, try being like a streamer about politics for like more than 5 minutes. These people would like instantly perish.
And the donors are more part of this world, right? The donors are expressive in their politics. So, maybe it dries up your money. People got into and people feel strongly about these issues. They don't want to get attacked on Twitter. I mean, this stuff is unpleasant for people. They don't like it. And so to me, what you want to do is redraw a line that used to exist more brightly than it does now. The activists, the people who push you, the people who are more prophetic in their politics, they have a very, very, very important role in all this. And the politicians, the hacks, the strategists, they do too.
Yeah, except that there isn't this clear line between those two things. Like, activists have a role in moving and pushing public opinion, for sure. But often, who has the larger platform? Who is the one with actual institutional power? And this has always been one of the flaws of Ezra Klein's abundance agenda, which is that it completely disregards power analysis. And he would probably be like, well, activists have a power too, but like, who has more power? Who has institutional power in this situation? Is it activists? Or is it the actual elected politicians? Or is it the actual people who are seeking to become elected politicians? Activists have platforms, but the ones that are given the credence, the ones that are given the most validity in our mainstream press, they're the politicians. And that's why when we talk about politicians have a duty to make good policy popular, that's why we talk about that. Because they have the platform to make it happen the fastest and the easiest. And they have a duty to use that platform to advocate for their policies.
And it is the job of the first group to push, and it is the job of the second group to not get pushed too far. And I think this had to do with social media, and I think it had to do with how much our politics polarized. I think it had to do with the reaction to Donald Trump and how outrageous the way he treats people is, and it kind of creates I call this oppositional mirroring. You kind of become the opposite of the people on the other side. I think it became, both, it felt to people like it was career level dangerous. I mean, I got called a white supremacist at the Atlantic Ideas Festival last week.
Yeah, me too. Yesterday on Blue Sky, actually. So welcome to the club.
Good company here. I would love for them to finish those sentences. Why did people call you that? What was their argument? I'm curious now. Why did people call Ezra Klein a white supremacist? Why did people call Tim Miller a white supremacist? What's the context? I guess we'll never know. But ha ha ha. Good jokes.
What did you do? What was your?
I talked to Ben Shapiro.
Oh God, we're gonna get to that. Yeah, that's next.
Okay, yeah, okay, all right. That's the context. I love that even Tim Miller's just like, oh, all right, okay, we'll get to that next. Like, Doug, yeah, maybe the guy who wrote unironically Arabs love to bomb shit and live in sewage. Maybe being on a show with that guy and talking about how we need to live alongside in harmony with the guy who thinks that way. Maybe just throwing this out there. Maybe that's not in fact gonna win you points with folks to make them think you're not a white supremacist. Also, yo, thank you so goddamn much. I think my Twitch chat might have broken. Or my YouTube chat might have broken. There we go.
I'm in Portland and the city is very aware of these guys. The ICE building is covered in graffiti and watched all day. Even the cops give it a wide berth. Here's some BW of fuel.
Hell yeah, Pluto Burns. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Very much appreciated. And Patrick Lucas, thank you for the gifted membership. Also appreciated. I think I've said about enough, about as much as I want to say about Ezra Klein. It might be interesting to come back and do another segment on what he has to say about Ben Shapiro, but by and large, I think I've communicated my point. I do love black people. It's true, Ti. Thank you for the 20 sec. But yes, it's It's all just a charade. It's a charade, for Ezra Klein. I don't think he's actually serious about politics. Because no one who's serious and actually believes in changing the world for the better talks the way about politics that Ezra Klein does. Yeah, he's a deeply unserious clown. Exactly. And with that, remember, folks, if you've been enjoying this, like, comment, and subscribe. Much shorter and condensed set of thoughts about what Ezra Klein is up to these days, and just how it completely misses the mark of what is necessary in our current times.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the scenes. Politics, gaming, plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.